Hello everybody and welcome back. Now don't you click off this video because this is important news. This is a health alert from me to you. The CDC has also put out several warnings about these outbreaks. Now number one, there's the measles outbreak. Now what I want to ask you about that is they're talking about everybody getting the vaccination again even if you've already had it. So that means the vaccine that you got earlier in life did not work. So is this a new vaccine or is this the old vaccine and they're just trying to do something? Because if it's the old vaccine, it's just not going to work because people have already been vaccinated. So people are coming from other countries or going and visiting other countries and coming back and spreading the measles again in the United States.
Calling them ignorant and engaged in a, quote, self-absorbed rejection of science. Astroturfers and trolls saw that kind of talk as a green light to do more of it on public comment boards, suggesting that children with vaccine-related brain injuries are genetic mutants, and calling mothers of vaccine-injured children liars and witches. Dr. James Cherry, a prominent UCLA pediatrician and infectious disease expert, publicly joined in the blame and shame game, hurling insults at parents declining to give children every one of the government-recommended 69 doses of 16 vaccines, including 2 MMR shots. Dr. Cherry said, quote, "There are some pretty dumb people out there," and, quote, "some people are just terribly selfish." Name-calling is a convenient way to deflect attention from inconvenient truths about vaccine failures and the dissolving myth of vaccine-acquired herd immunity. Case in point, there were 600 cases of measles reported in America in 2014, even though 95% of children entering kindergarten have gotten 2 doses of MMR vaccine, which is also true for 92% of school children ages 13 to 17 years. Plus, less than 1% of children under age 3 are completely unvaccinated, and 92% of them have gotten 1 or more MMR shots. In some states, the MMR vaccination rate is approaching 100%. According to Dr. Cherry, measles vaccine-acquired herd immunity is in effect with a measles vaccination rate of more than 90%. Well, that's been true in America since 1981, with 1 dose of MMR vaccine, and since 2000 for 2 doses of MMR vaccine, which is one reason why the CDC declared measles eradicated from the U.S. in 2000. But clearly, measles virus has not been eradicated from the U.S., just like measles has not been eradicated from any other country. And emerging scientific evidence suggests it never will be, no matter how many doses of MMR vaccine are mandated for every man, woman, and child in the world. Why is a big deal being made out of 51 cases of measles reported in the U.S.? Perhaps public health officials would prefer that the media and the public focus on a handful of measles cases at Disneyland and not focus on the fact that millions of Americans have gotten flu shots that don't work. And healthcare workers are being fired if they don't get flu shots that don't work. If you got a flu shot this year, it will do absolutely nothing to protect you from the influenza strain making most people sick. Worse, scientists have confirmed that the more often you get an annual flu shot, the less effective it is. How many vaccinated people are attending schools, going to grocery stores, and working in hospitals and doctors' offices without a clue they are infected with shedding and transmitting influenza virus because they only have mild flu symptoms or no symptoms at all? And it is anybody's guess how many children are getting sick after live influenza vaccine is sprayed up their noses, or are shedding vaccine strain live virus that could make other people sick. The pertussis vaccine is failing too. Like measles, in recent years there have been huge increases in reports of B. pertussis whooping cough among children and adults in California and other states, and many of those people have been vaccinated. That was true for pertussis outbreaks in the U.S. 30 years ago too. Now public health officials are finally admitting the truth that many scientists have been publishing for a long time. You can be fully vaccinated for pertussis get infected, and show atypical or no symptoms, and spread whooping cough to vaccinated and unvaccinated persons. In fact, Dr. Cherry himself admits that there are millions of undiagnosed B. pertussis whooping cough cases every year in America, even though 95% or more of America's school children have gotten multiple doses of pertussis-containing vaccinations. In 2013, Dr. Cherry wrote, quote, "Neither B. pertussis infection or B. pertussis vaccination elicit long-lasting immunity. Infection and illness repeatedly occur in all ages throughout life." End of quote. So much for the myth of pertussis vaccine-acquired herd immunity. It isn't very scientific to blame pertussis or influenza outbreaks on unvaccinated people. And it isn't very scientific to blame measles outbreaks on unvaccinated people either. In some outbreaks of measles in California last year, nearly 20% of the people had been vaccinated. The CDC says that 12% of the measles cases associated with Disneyland were vaccinated, some of them with at least 2 doses of MMR vaccine. Measles vaccine-acquired herd immunity is a dissolving myth too. Public health doctors are scrambling to explain leaks in measles vaccine immunity and have come up with this lame excuse. They say they just discovered that 1 measles vaccinated adult in 10 is now susceptible to measles because vaccine immunity wears off. They call it waning immunity. Now get ready for the sucker punch. Dr. Cherry told a TV network last week that the solution to waning measles vaccine immunity is to give additional doses of MMR vaccine to adults. That's right. Let's just mandate more MMR shots for millions of Americans and make Merck stockholders really happy. But who is Dr. Cherry kidding? We all know that adults are way too hard to pin down, unless you threaten them with loss of a job or medical care or put them in prison. So I predict that the 3rd MMR shot will more likely target high school students and people trying to get a college education. Dr. Cherry's solution to reported measles cases at Disneyland reminds me of when doctors told parents in 1990 that they didn't realize 1 dose of MMR vaccine would fail to provide lifelong immunity after all. So kids are going to have to get a 2nd dose of MMR. The inconvenient scientific truth about measles in Disneyland and around the world is that public health doctors do not know how many vaccinated people can be infected with measles, show few or no symptoms, and transmit measles to other people. Government health officials do not conduct routine active surveillance of vaccinated people to find out if they are experiencing asymptomatic or atypical measles and transmitting it to others. In addition, there are published studies demonstrating that people given live virus measles vaccine can be infected with vaccine strain measles virus and shed vaccine strain measles virus. Health officials do not conduct routine active surveillance of people getting live MMR vaccine to monitor for vaccine strain measles virus infection, shedding, and the potential for transmission. Most doctors and parents don't know that the CDC warns, quote, "During outbreaks, measles vaccine is administered to help control the outbreak, and in these situations, vaccine reactions may be mistakenly classified as measles cases. A small proportion of measles vaccine recipients experience rash and fever 10 to 14 days following vaccination." End of quote. Yes, MMR vaccine can cause vaccine strain measles infection that looks just like measles. Plus, other common viral infections like adenovirus infections can look just like measles with rash, fever, and conjunctivitis symptoms and be diagnosed as measles unless there is expensive RNA lab testing done to confirm that what looks like measles really is wild-type measles. And now for the second sucker punch, at least for families living in California. Dr. Pan, the pediatrician politician who lobbied in 2013 to pass a bill restricting non-medical vaccine exemptions for children to attend school, told one California newspaper last week that he intends to introduce new legislation to do more damage to the ability of parents to weigh the benefits and risks of vaccination and make voluntary vaccine choices for their children. Will California health officials take away religious and conscientious belief vaccine exemptions and leave doctors like Dr. Pan and Dr. Cherry in charge of who gets a public education? The hype about 51 cases of measles reportedly linked to Disneyland has more to do with covering up vaccine failures and propping up the dissolving myth of vaccine-acquired herd immunity than it does about protecting the public health. It has a lot to do with defensive doctors trying to blame a minority of parents who are refusing to place irrational faith in them and their moving goalposts and are choosing instead to think and act rationally. That third MMR shot is coming to America. And so is a massive pharma-led lobby attempt to demonize and punish all Americans who defend the human right to exercise informed consent to medical risk-taking, including vaccine risk-taking. The calls to strike down those who do not use every dose of the growing list of government-mandated vaccines is on a fast track. It will include banning the unvaccinated from exercising the right to get a public education, medical care, employment, and many other human and civil rights. The battle lines are clearly drawn. Now Americans have a choice to make. Will we stand up and fight to protect our freedom, to make voluntary decisions about which vaccines we buy and use, or will we permit liability-free drug companies and government health officials to take that freedom from us? Go to nvicadvocacy.org and learn how you can take action to protect vaccine exemptions in your state. Learn more about the risks and complications of measles and measles vaccine on nvic.org. And if you or your child have been vaccinated and the vaccine failed to protect you or caused harm, you can report and share your experience with others on nvic.org. It's your health, your family, your choice.
Now, one that's even more important is this Candida Auris. It's a fungus, and if you get it, you're going to be very sick. Now, this virus, which is a fungus, when it gets on a surface, you can clean it and come back a month later, and it will be growing again. So there's been reports of some hospitals and some rooms where patients have had the Candida Auris fungus. They've had to tear down the walls, take up the floors, take down the ceilings, get rid of all the equipment, and I would imagine they incinerate it to get rid of the virus, the fungus from the Candida Auris fungus. So that thing, that's a bad boy, and there's no vaccine for that as of right now.
Candida auris is a newly emerging multi-drug resistant yeast that is causing invasive infections and has been associated with healthcare outbreaks. And so there's several hundred species of Candida, and several of them are pathogenic, meaning they cause disease in humans. And in fact, candidemia, which is a bloodstream infection caused by Candida species, is one of the most common healthcare-associated infections in the United States. Now, if that's not bad enough, what makes Candida auris really concerning and a global threat are several things. One is that it's multi-drug resistant, and so it's almost all isolates that we know of so far are resistant to fluconazole, which is the most commonly used antifungal medication. Good majority of isolates are also resistant to amphotericin, which is another antifungal that's used to treat fungal infections. And then finally, we've had some isolates that are resistant to even echinocandins, which are the latest type of antifungal drugs that are available. And so that is really unprecedented with candidas, that they're resistant to almost all the available classes of antifungal drugs. So one, it's multi-drug resistant. The second issue with Candida auris is that it's difficult to identify. So it's easily, with the methods that most laboratories use, it can be misidentified as other related candidas, and so people may not recognize that they actually have a really serious infection on hand. So that's number two. And then number three, what's really got us concerned is that Unlike what we think of for most other Candida species, where it's really something that comes from Candida that basically lives in your body, colonizes people, and then causes infection when they're exposed to antibiotics in an intensive care unit or something like that, Candida auris seems to be spreading in healthcare settings, so causing outbreaks, and that's pretty rare for Candida. There are certain species that can cause outbreaks, but in general, for Candida, we don't think of them as being transmitted in a healthcare setting. We don't think of infection control. So that's what makes Candida auris really concerning. And so just to recap again, Candida auris is a globally emerging threat that is because it's multi-drug resistant, it's difficult to identify, and because it causes healthcare associated infections.
The other thing that's come up lately, if you haven't heard about it, is the AIDS outbreak is back again, and it's spreading again. So I don't know if the medication that they've been giving for that, if it's mutated, and now that's not effective. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. All I know is what I see in the news. And if you go to the CDC website, which I'll put a link below, and you can check that out. Also, all three of these stories on the measles outbreak, Candida Auris outbreak, and AIDS outbreak, I've put links below to Google pages where you can just search and read about all of them. But there's a epidemic going on around the world. This is not just in the United States. It started in other places and now it's in the United States. But you need to heed all these warnings from the CDC. And I don't know why it's not on the news in the evening and stuff, why they're not talking about this more than they are. They'll talk about, butterflies and, birds migrating and stuff like that. And birds could be where some of this is coming from. But anyway, yeah, the Candida Auris fungus, that can be transmitted just by touching. So birds could be moving it around. I don't know, but it could be. So anyway, this is Harold with WorldTVOnDemand.com. Thanks for viewing my video. Give me a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Check out all the links and all the stories below, because I put all the information down there that I could find for links for all three of these stories. So check them out, and I'll have another video for you soon. This is Harold signing off, baby. You guys have a fantastic day. This is Harold signing off. I'm out of here.